Time for a bit of lightsaber chassis repair. Savi's workshop. Lightsaber chassis. With a white crystal. And when I turn it on, it does not ignite. But if I just turn it a little bit, the blade I'm talking about, and then turn it on, it ignites just fine. There is a problem up here where the connector for the blade is. I want to take this thing apart and take a look at that, see if I can figure out what's causing all the trouble. So I need to open this up so I can get access to the connector that's up here where the blade connects to the chassis. And to do that, I'm going to start by opening the bottom. The screws removed, I'm still holding on to both halves here very carefully. This is spring loaded, and the only thing keeping it in place now are the two halves being held together by my hand. So what I want to do here is, as I start to slowly let go, I want to make sure I have a hand on the button here so it can come out. And you can see that nice healthy spring holding that button in place there. And now I can remove the two halves like so. The housing here, which is where I think the source of the problem is. So I'm going to remove this PCB, and I'm going to remove the ribbon cable with it. Get that out of the way. You can see there's a single white wire. That's the data line that goes up to the data pin in the connector here. That carries the signal that contains all the commands to the blade, telling the blade what color to turn on as. And then you'll also notice here, if I can get this out there, that the other two wires that go into the connector are that power connector that I unplugged from the base. The hilt gets its power directly from the batteries. There's no voltage regulation here at this point. It's just a plug that goes directly to the batteries in the base of the hilt. And that, along with the data pin, comes up through this connector into here, into these pogo pins. And if I can find my blade here, you can see that there is a notch here that matches up with the notch in the base of your blade, so it would connect like that. And then when you twist your blade, this whole unit turns inside the housing, and that plastic notch there is necessary because that's where all the torque, as you're turning the blade, is transferred from the blade to this unit so it can turn. What is twisting that's going to cause a problem? This housing twists, but the contents of the housing aren't moving, nor is this PCB. But what is moving is the power cable and the data line. And I see what looks like some possible damage there to the power cable. That might be the problem. I really need to inspect this cable here to see if this cable is damaged anywhere else. And if I need to replace this cable, I'm going to definitely need to get in here to solder the wires to it. I'm going to remove the ribbon cable from this end. I don't want to damage it. This top is probably going to want to come flying off. So I should probably keep my thumb in a position that's going to allow me to not see the top half of this connector go flying across the room. Okay. There are the pogo pins. You can see they are not, they each have a spring, and they are not soldered in place. There's the whole pogo pin. So this, put somewhere safe. Do not lose that. Those pins, those springs are critical. And now we can see the PCB itself, which is actually a pretty straightforward thing. I'm seeing a lot of exposed wire there, a lot of chafing. That's not good. Oh, there we go. Can you see that? The negative wire has completely come off. That is why that was failing. This is definitely a weak point in the design of the sabers. Boy, alright. How do I want to go about handling this? Trying to feed the excess slack through here. And what kind of room do I have to work with here? There's some sticky material here. It looks like it might be glue. So they knew that this was going to be a problem, and they tried to protect the pins here, the wires, by giving them a little extra something to grip onto. You can get a really good sense of how chafed those wires are. Oof. I think I'm just going to solder it back in place. I need to get rid of or clean the one hole here where the black wire used to go. I'm just putting a little mark next to it, just so I know that that's the pin I'm trying to clean up. I'm going to put this in a vise and start cleaning that hole. Okay, so the plan here is to remove the solder that's on that pin there. And I'm going to start by actually adding solder. It's just something to sort of help things along a little bit. Let's try this. Let's see if we can suck some of that solder up. Again. Yes, the hole is clean. Okay. So the next thing I need to do is re-strip that. Do I want to go with proper wire cutters, or do I try and do this by hand? Let's try and go by hand. Good enough. I think I stripped a little too much there. That's okay. Pre-tin the wire. Put the wire through the hole, like so. Bend it over a little bit so it doesn't fall out. New solder comes in. There's the new connection. Hopefully this one will last a little bit longer. I'll just clip the excess there. Okay, wires have been soldered. Do I want to put a glob of hot melt glue? I do. I think I do. I've added a small blob of glue to try and hold stuff together. It's still a little warm. I want to try and press this back into place. Now, you might be wondering, how does this align itself? Well, there's a notch in the PCB. There's a notch in the housing. That is how you know how to align the board. Now that PCB is sitting higher than it was before. Is that going to impact things? Yes, it is. Okay. I need to get that hot glue flat. The hot glue idea just isn't enough. So off camera, what I did is I took my hot air gun that I used to reflow solder, and I used that to reheat that blob of hot melt glue, and was able to push it down, or to let it to melt so that it became more flat. And then while it was still hot, I pushed the whole thing into here. So now this PCB is really in there now. If I need to remove this PCB again, not a big deal. A hot melt glue, you can very easily break it off of stuff with a little rubbing alcohol or isopropyl alcohol. So I could just dunk this in a little vat of IPA, and after a couple of minutes try and pry that out, and it'll probably come right off. So I'm not too worried, but hopefully I don't ever have to touch this thing again. I'm going to keep them upside down like this, because otherwise if I tip it over, they'll fall out along with their springs. I can see that there's a notch on the PCB, or on the housing there. There's a notch there. I want to try and line those up. That looks good. Now I just need to screw everything down. All right, hopefully that will have fixed the problem. Okay, time for reassembly. Okay, time to see if this works. First, hasn't exploded yet. Kyber crystal detected. The lights are blinking, which is a good sign that the ribbon cable is okay. Put the switch on. Good, it doesn't detect a blade yet. Hey, it's fixed. One more time in slow motion, please.